r/AskReddit. Hiring managers, what are some telltale signs that your candidate is making things up? Having interviewed quite a few candidates, I've come to accept that many people will try to BS their way through something they have a dabbling knowledge in. That's alright. When I ask a direct question and the person is trying to work it out on the fly to come up with an answer that sounds correct, I get some great insight into their troubleshooting abilities. This only works if you know what it is you are talking about though. If you've never heard of Ansible, please don't try to tell me what a great database application it is. At the end of the day though, my favorite answer and the one most likely to get a candidate with limited experience onto the next phase is to just admit you don't know, but that you'll look it up/Google it and be able to answer the question next time. Most recent candidate we hired did just that. I passed the question I'd asked them on to the next person to have time to do the interview, and they were asked again. They must have had the right answer this time because I'm training them now. Well, I was testing a potential welder once. He showed up in shorts, muscle shirt, and flip-flops to do a weld test and interview. I turned him away citing safety concerns about his wardrobe and never rescheduled. Figured he was too dumb for me to deal with. Putting fluent in English on their resume and not knowing a word of English when I conduct the interview in English. Maybe they thought fluent meant don't know any. My English has the flu, it is fluent. I had a guy like that I interviewed. He couldn't answer the vast majority of my questions, but we hired him anyway since he was our CTO's nephew from Ukraine. I talked to him later after his English greatly improved, and I realized he just didn't understand me because I used too many idioms and obscure words. Working with him made me much better at communicating with our offshore team that I manage now. When you're doing a video interview and you can watch them try to Google stuff in the reflection of their glasses. Small props for being clever though, he was paraphrasing the question back to me as a way to use the voice assistant. Guess I'll wear contacts next time. We have had many instances where the candidate would look to the right of the monitor and then repeat something word by word. They had a more experienced friend feeding them answers from behind the monitor. We have had people take this a step further and lip sync the answer from someone off camera. We have had folks wearing a headphone in one ear while clearly responding to our voices from a computer speaker. And they repeated each question as we asked it. Hey, you aren't going to work, but can we get the number of the guy who has actually been answering our questions? He seems to know his shit. Currently 15, looking for a fast food job just to get started. What are some good things to do during our interview? Show up a little early, dress nicely, be polite, and don't offer them any drugs. This actually happened to me. Ride along interview and the guy starts pointing out the houses he used to sell drugs to. He was clean now though. Cut to 15 minutes later, after I mentioned I did some drugs when I was a kid, and he let me know he could get me anything I wanted. One woman I interviewed literally took a pause and read the answers to the questions straight off of Google online Skype interview. I noticed it because there were really weird pauses and googled it myself and literally followed along like subtitles. Wow. Did you call her out on it? No, I'm pretty sure we continued with the interview, was about halfway through when I decided to investigate and threw it out after. It was just embarrassing. This woman was like easily 20 years older than me and interviewing for a professional position and obviously knew nothing about her field or didn't know how to convey it. As someone who has hired many technicians in it positions, I'm amazed at how many people would fake highly technical knowledge. I remember I needed a telecom engineer with very specific knowledge of a very specific voice system. I was getting suspicious of this one candidate, so I started asking about the exact syntax of command lines, and this guy was actually throwing out made up commands. I was both fascinated and annoyed. My last dev job I was asked how much I knew about a certain variation of SQL. I've been a strong SQL guy for years, but haven't used this type. I just said, yeah, I haven't used that, but I'm a top-notch Googler. Got the job, in part because I appeared truthful. Maybe more of an answer about general competence, but in my observation the smartest people are comfortable saying they don't know something, or acknowledge limitations in their knowledge or experience. Naive or bluffing candidates want to project an air of knowing everything, which is implausible. Another signal is how eager they are to go into depth. I interview programmers and technical staff, so I like to ask them about the project they are most proud of. I listen carefully and ask a few questions about how they worked through some thorny tech aspects. I understand that software is a team effort, but the legitimate contributors are eager to talk about technical details of what they built. The ones who just attended meetings and rarely contributed much struggle to say anything of substance. That is quite telling in my view. We had an interview candidate who said their Excel skills were 9.5 out of 10, and they knew how to do pivot tables. They literally started crying when we brought out a laptop for the skills test and asked them to make a pivot table out of sample data. I had one guy who listed himself as specific manager at specific company at specific location from 2007 to 2011. The thing is, that was my position and title and location. We had someone come in and interview for a call center position. Their resume claimed they had 3 years working in a call center in town. When she arrived, she was very lethargic and couldn't answer basic interview questions. When asked what she did at call center A, she literally just said call center rep. When asked to elaborate on her duties, she repeated the same thing. No details were given. She even claimed that she has never been asked such hard and detailed questions during a job interview before. We didn't make it past 3 very basic questions. We have concluded she lied about working at call center A, or at least she certainly didn't work anywhere near 3 years there. It was probably 3 days, which was like 3 years to her. I work at an architecture firm, and I kid you not, a candidate attached one of our projects in her portfolio. Exactly same third rendering. It wasn't even listed on the company website. How she got it is still baffling. The hiring manager just played along. How crazy would it be if she had created it and someone at the firm got a hold of it? Plot twist. Bigger plot twist. Someone at the firm can't do their job, so they outsourced to contractors, whom she was one of, and did the project. I was interviewing candidates for level 1 technical help desk. The most ridiculous candidate had a B&W printout of an MBA from a Panama university that didn't exist from a Google search. I asked him how he would guide a user to troubleshoot their internet connection and replied that TCP/IP protocol is used for communication over internets. Mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. You're hired. At a job fair I told people that we were doing a lot of work in the programming language Balrave and asked if they had any experience with it. A disappointingly high number talked about using it for classes in college and writing some side programs in it after they heard about it, and so on. They must have felt silly later when they googled it and discovered that there is no programming language Balrave. I'd just made it up as a way to tell who was lying to me. I speak enough gringo Spanish to get by, and back in the day, when I was a hiring manager, if anybody put fluent in Spanish on their resume, I'd walk into the interview room and introduce myself and start the interview in Spanish. The looks of panic from the kids who'd taken, like, 3 years of high school Spanish before college were priceless. Someone did that to me once, but in German. I minored in German in college and the person interviewing me spoke less German than I did, thankfully. I would never lie about language fluency on a resume. It is way too easy to disprove if just one person knows a little of it. All buzzwords, no context, examples, or personal opinions. On the flip side of this, I was in an interview once where I gave relevant experiences and examples of what the interviewer wanted to hear, but never used the buzzwords. So after each question I had to be asked point blank questions to find out. She liked me a lot and told me afterwards that in further interviews make sure use these buzzwords because it's what they're looking for. If I wasn't so charismatic, she would have just let me go. A common one I see a lot is work history that is grandiose and excessively overqualified, especially if it's difficult or impossible to verify. I'm in a high immigration city and deal with lots of international candidates and have met a vast amount of people with titles like Executive Director of Worldwide Distribution or Senior Vice President of Global Operations from a company in Bulgaria or Cambodia or Dubai with no phone number or English website. The position descriptors and skills on these resumes usually look copy and pasted from a template, and additionally, these people often claim master or doctorate level educations that are equally difficult to verify. I have had more than one CFO interview for an entry-level position who had never seen a profit and loss statement before. Some places do love inflated titles though. One of mine was Director of Imaging Department. I taught people how to use the scanner. It's ridiculous.